Hi friends! Welcome back to another art video. Today I'm going to share some tips on how I draw faces, both stylized and realistic, using a reference image. So I have on my iPad a picture of a model that I just pulled from Pinterest. I believe her name is Christina Nadine. I would have to double check that, but she was on Pinterest and I think she's really cute and I love the pose that she's doing, so I think this would be a very good portrait image to work from. So when I do my stylized faces, I like to make sure that I emphasize a lot of features, like her cheekbones. I'm going to definitely make them super out there. I like to enlarge my eyes and I like to enlarge my lips and kind of just make everything much more cuter that way. So I'm going to take my sketch brush and kind of just like draw out my circle. There we go. And I always like draw a circle for the head to kind of give myself an idea of how the head, where the head will be, and kind of give a basic direction for the head as well. So I'll add my lines for the nose and for the eyes. I'm gonna go ahead and just emphasize a lot of these things, like her cheekbone. I'm just gonna do a quick sketch first, and then I'll go in and do like a cleaner sketch. I like to make sure my eyes are bigger and lashy. I also love to use the edge of my pencil to create a wider brush stroke. It'll be lighter and it'll be more textured, but I like it that way. It gives more character to the sketch. I also love to do pronounced eyebrows in my personal drawings. I think it just adds so much character. She's starting to have some anime eyes happening, and I think you could totally tell my influences in drawing. I try not to make eyes look super anime. I like to make the lash line thick, more pronounced, with eyelashes that kind of just flow outward. Just exaggerate the part of the eyes that are viewed as feminine. So I'm still working out the eyes a little bit. I like to flip my canvas on the horizontal axis so I can see if there's anything that's jumping out, that something's wrong. And I think there's something wrong with this eye here. I can't quite get it, but maybe a few more tweaks here and there. If I make the top of that eye a little bit thicker, maybe that'll help. I also like to accentuate the lash line. If I make it thicker, I want to make sure that the eyes look just as sultry, or that the eyes are kind of just half or partially open and not fully open. I feel like thicker lash lines kind of imply that there's just a sultriness hiding behind the veil, so I'm gonna start erasing my little face lines, my directional lines. And so when I draw my stylized faces, I like to, the main part of the face, I like to just exaggerate. Yeah, usually when I'm drawing, I like to make the eyes big. I think it's a very good feature to exaggerate. Although I think they're a little bit too big here, so I'm just gonna like size them down just a little bit so they're more in proportion to the face. I'm gonna give her like, I'm gonna accentuate her button nose a little bit. I like to make sure that the cheekbones are also a feature, are like a very like out there feature as well. Oftentimes whenever I make something a little too thick, I'll just use my eraser and kind of knock things back a little bit more. I use the eraser just as much as I use the pencil for the most part. So I'm going to go in and define a little bit more of the shapes in her face here. Essentially, I'm just kind of getting down these symbols, like I know what an eyebrow like kind of looks like, so I'm just condensing all that information to get just like the one like trapezoidal shape. And I want to make sure that I get her her chin and her jawline right, so just gonna take my time with it, doing slower, softer brush strokes. Now let's do the nose. So she has a cute little button nose. Sometimes drawing a circle will help get that shape for the nose. And I'm going to draw the lips. I want to make sure that I draw them like super pointed like lips right here, and a very nice bottom lip, like a very chunky bottom lip. Okay, so now I'm going to draw the hair, and it's looking a little bit wild, so I'm just kind of going to draw where I think the forehead and the hairline meet, and then draw basically a circle for the rest of the head. So I'm going to draw my forehead here, or at least the hairline. And then I'm just gonna draw where I think the rest of the skull is. And I'm gonna build the hair off of that. Let me just move everything down. That way this will give weight and a lot of depth to the hair, and doesn't look like she is just a flat head, you know? And using the side of my pen, I'm just gonna lightly outline where I think the hair should be. Now I'm going to give her some blush marks with the side of my pen tool, so I get the wide sweeping brush strokes. And I'm just gonna go in and like lightly color in her hair. What the hair does around her neck is that it kind of just accentuates that she has like a thin neck. So that's what we're gonna do here. We're just gonna add a little bit of hair around her neck to kind of just imply that she has a skinny neck. I usually like to give a little bit of a shadow underneath the chin. Too dark. And we're gonna give her a little bit of freckling because she has some light freckles. And luckily with the stylized portrait, it doesn't really need to be perfect. It just has to get the essence. And that's my stylized portrait. It's a little, her eyes are big, her lips are big, her nose is cute and buttony, and her fingers are just a little bit more exaggerated, more billowy, more stretchy. And this is more or less how I like to draw my faces. I like to make sure that I just kind of make sure I get the high cheekbones, the large eyes, the large eyelashes. And I just love to exaggerate that in portraiture. So for drawing stylized portraits, I tend to rely heavily on like symbols and stuff like that. And by that, I mean like we all know that an eye, like if we drew an eye, we would draw it like this, or like a football shape, and then with the eye and the iris, and that's a symbol of an eye. But when it comes to actually drawing realistically, at least when I do my contour sketches in the morning, I rely heavily on shapes and like planes and peaks. Like my nose is technically a peak, and the place right here, that's a plane that kind of like curves, and my cheekbones go like out, and then another plane comes out down. So it's like little mountains and little valleys. It's the best way to think about like drawing. Is just like you're trying to deconstruct all of these mountains, peaks and valleys and ridges, and trying to condense it to make it look like a face. So we're gonna do that. So I like to start my realistic sketches by using contour and basic measuring tools. And so by that, a contour is basically just a continuous line of a shape. Not technically an outline, because that's not what contours are meant to be used for. Like they help in outlining shapes, but like it's really just to kind of get into crevices and peaks and all this fun stuff that you don't want to hear about your face, but really is there. So I like to do a basic contour to where I like investigate the face. This is all very fun words and fun terminology, so it's more nitty gritty. So I am going to like lower my brush size so it doesn't get too cartoony, too stylized. Usually thinner helps. And I like to start off with the top of the head, which you can't really see, so I'm going to make it up. And kind of just like navigate my way around the face, trying to figure out where certain points are in the face. So like a cheekbone is a point, a nose is a point, the top of her head to her hairline, that's a point. So I like to make sure that I'm hitting all of these points, and as I keep drawing, I'll keep erasing, knocking things back once I finally actually get the feel of the form. So we're going to start off with the tip of her hair, and what I like to do is I draw as I'm looking at the picture. So my eye guides my hand when I'm drawing realistic portraits. So here's the point of the tip of her hair, if you guys can see that, and I'm going to go ahead and draw to her hairline, however way I'm estimating that in my head. And I'm just going to go in and investigate, like, here's her hairline. I'm being very soft. I don't want to overwhelm the drawing, so it's very, very soft. And I'm just going to pretend that I see the top of her hair. And, line. Here's her hairline. And I'm just going to go as I see the shapes. Like, you don't have to get this part right. This is all investigation. So, like, I already know that my hairline is way too close to the edge of the head already. So it's just a lot of self-editing and just allowing yourself to be okay in the moment and just like be a little free and just learn as you're doing it. I also like to make sure that I'm making note of certain shapes. So I see a shape right here. The finger, the negative shape between her finger and her hand, I want to make sure I get that right. So I'm going to go in, start at the top of the hairline. Maybe I will make my brush a little bit bigger. And we're just gonna build her up. And I like to make sure I make very big dots where my points are. So here's the tip of my finger, or her finger, and I'm just gonna follow along. And there, at the connection between the finger and the rest of her hand, I'll make a point. The one thing about doing this on Procreate is if I hold too long, my line will just become straight or a curve or something, and that's not usually what I want, but it is fine. And it's always better to go lighter, because then it's easier to erase. Even if you're drawing digitally, you'll want to make sure that you're drawing light, because you don't want to over extend your hand. You don't want to be like gripping too hard. You want to get all the nuances, and you won't be able to get all the nuances by, smashing your screen. Because I know I can be pretty heavy-handed, and this is not like something that you should be heavy-handed with. So right now I'm just doing her hand, and I like to make sure that I keep my contours gestural, so I'm getting the essence of the person, I'm getting the essence of motion, and oftentimes I'll just draw in through. So I'll be drawing this knuckle to this finger, just to kind of, help me out, why make it any harder than it needs to be. Luckily, with this being digital, I can actually move things around. I can see that the hand is a little wonky already, just because I think I might be making the hand a little bit bigger than it needs to be. So I'm just gonna go ahead and zoom and move things and make things smaller. It's like I can see that the knuckle here is technically above the knuckle here, so I gotta make sure that this is higher than this. But I also see that this knuckle is also higher than the knuckle here, so I also need to make sure that I am keeping attention to that. And that's how I measure, just like in terms of what's next to it. Like, is that knuckle really that low? And it's good to vary your line width. Like, you see how I have this wispier than I do this line work. Kind of gives, it undulates a little bit of depth, a little bit of character. It kind of implies that the foreground's a little bit blurry, and then you can get razor sharp focus closer to the face. It's beautiful things like that that just happen while you're doing contour. Sometimes when I have trouble like this, I like to just measure or do like a quick T cross measure. So here's my finger. Here's where I think the cheekbone should be. Cheekbone to the top of the head that I can see, all the way to the bottom, and I can tell that my measurements are all off because the hand should end right here, so the portrait should end right here. So, and this is just me making my marks, all fun in progress, so let's try this again. See, the cheekbone will be here, up here, down here, and close enough. So, I have my marks now, and that's my cross measure. So I have my up and down and my straight across measurement. And I see that the finger kind of does align with the cheekbone, so I know kind of straight across that the cheekbone will be right here. Some days I can do this in like 3 minutes, some days I can do this in like 20 minutes. So we will see how far we'll get. So roughly the shape between the hair to here, hair to the hairline, should match the same distance as the hairline to the little crease in her hair. So that is what I'm aiming for. So here's my sketch so far. I have my cross points from earlier, my cross a little bit here, I don't even know what to call it, cross measurement. And already, like, I took a little step back and I just came back and I already see a couple adjustments that I need to make. So I'm going to use my eraser and kind of just push back a lot of the detail and use it to contour along and make the right shapes. Like, I know the eyebrow is a little curved, and I'm gonna try and go along the shadow of her face and just kind of contour and block in harsher shadows. I know her nose doesn't look right, but that's okay. It'll come together later. So I know that her nose is kind of just one big chunk like that, except I know that her finger isn't that close to the nose, so I have some adjustments to make. So here's the finger. I'm gonna make sure that to me looks right. This finger doesn't look right, so I'm just gonna bend it a little bit more, a little bit tiny bit. And then I'm gonna bend this pinky finger just a little bit more, using softer pencil marks. Then with this finger, I'm gonna kind of guesstimate the shadow. I'm making my points, so I think the eyebrow ends here. Her cheekbone curves inward. Now I'm going to block it in with some shading. Again, softer is better. Let me push back those lines. I'm just gonna quickly shade this. My realistic portraits are way more sketchy. I have a feeling that her eyes are pretty big still. And I'm kind of just following her lips, like where I see peaks and mountains are forming. And just following the line. I'm just gonna shade this in just a little bit. And that's my realistic face. There's a little bit more to it. There's more details. There's more sketchiness. I tried following along the shadows and the planes. I love how this hand came out. My drawing tends to mix shading with contour. I think that gives more depth to the drawing. I think it's more intriguing that way. So there's my realistic portrait, and then here's my stylized portrait. Definitely was a really fun exercise to do. I love, like, you can see all my mark making, and I love doing contour. It's such a fun thing to work on, to practice, and I tend to, sometimes I'll do it in the morning, and if I do it very consecutively, like, I'll be able to knock this out in like a few minutes. And that didn't happen today, but that's okay because there's a lot to explain my thought process. I love making sure that I'm using measurements in the photo to kind of highlight measurements in the drawing. So for example, like this portion of her face should match the edge to her nose, to the ear. So kind of just keeping that in check. Oh, I didn't even do the ear. Well, let's... There. So it's kind of like just a lot of measuring that you didn't think you'd have to do until you do it. And it's just a really good way to kind of keep your portrait to scale. So if you're like using measurements from the portrait, you can scale it to your drawing. And you don't have to worry about, I don't know how to make her eye any bigger or any smaller. Just like, her eye, measure that against maybe like her ear, and if it's the same size, then you know that you have to make sure that's roughly the same size. So there's a lot more to it, but it's fun. I love drawing this way, usually in my mornings when I am like ready and inspired. I hope this helped you guys today, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if there are any art tips in the comments below that you want to learn from me, and until next time, bye friends.